The FAA has just issued an airworthiness directive involving the potential of more disastrous fuel tank explosions like the one that occurred on TWA Flight 800 back in 1996. I'll fill you in on that late-breaking story. Well, Boeing has finally announced their decision on if they will move their entire 787 Dreamliner operation out of the state of Washington and consolidate it to the Charleston, South Carolina facility. I'll tell you what they decided. Former fighter pilot, lawyer, and Delta captain FAA boss Steve Dickson recently finished his check ride on the Dash 737 to test out all the new bells and whistles, and so far the chief said he likes what he sees. And I'll tell you what else he had to say. In another related Boeing breaking story fresh off the presses, I'll tell you about a new draft report by the FAA regarding the training requirements for all MAX 737 pilots before they can fly that particular aircraft again. I'll get into some specifics of what they had to say. Dublin-based Ryanair is rumored to be in talks with Boeing to purchase a whopping 200 brand new 737 MAX jets. No, you heard that right. 200 MAX jets. We'll talk about that amazing story too. Also, American Airlines plans to start training its pilots on the new MAX MCAS improvements beginning in November, and the 777X program reaches yet another important milestone as General Electric's mighty GE9X engines get the U.S. government's official blessing, with federal certification clearing the way for the plane to officially start rigorous flight testing and eventually commercial flights. And finally, in somewhat of a sad story, the very last Airbus A380 rolled out of the Toulouse, France factory last week. We'll have that story for you and much, much more on this inaugural episode of Maximus Aviation's Week in Review. Greetings everybody, Maximus here. I hope you're all doing well wherever you may be around this great big world of ours. On Tuesday, the FAA issued an airworthiness directive for all 747-400s as well as all Boeing 767s. The airworthiness directive states that this directive requires modifying the fuel quantity indicating system, or the FQIS, to prevent development of an ignition source inside the center fuel tank due to electrical fault conditions. It goes on to say this directive also provides alternative actions for cargo planes as well. The FAA is issuing this directive to address the unsafe conditions on these products. Well, that seems pretty serious. This is the same flaw that was the cause of the situation that brought down TWA Flight 800 in 1996 when the NTSB determined that the fuel-air mixture likely exploded in the jet's center fuel tank as a result of a short or exposed wire. Boeing and various unions tried to get the FAA to withdraw the airworthiness directive, citing the extremely improbable risk of fuel tank fires. The FAA, of course, disagreed. Well, Boeing made it official last week, and in a move that will surprise absolutely no one, they are closing their Washington 787 production factory and moving the entire operation to their South Carolina facility by mid-next year, 2021. In a message to employees, Boeing's commercial airplanes CEO Stan Deal acknowledged that the 787 is the tremendous success that it is today thanks to our great teammates in Everett, Washington. Deal also insisted that this decision does not change our commitment to Washington State. Boeing's two major unions, the International Association of Machinists and the Society of Professional Engineering Employees in Aerospace, expressed frustration. Since Boeing announced in July that it was studying the consolidation, officials of both unions argued with management for keeping production in Washington. Already hemorrhaging cash from the extended grounding of the 737 MAX, earlier this year Boeing already responded by reducing overall jet production drastically, along with substantial job cuts focused on its commercial jet unit to consolidate cash. In a news release, Boeing said that a detailed analysis confirms South Carolina as the better option to improve the efficiency of the 787 production and maximize savings. The Seattle Times reported that there are rumors among employees that Boeing might shut down its 737 MAX plant in Renton and move production up to Everett. However, this would be very challenging logistically and would risk upsetting the planned recovery of the MAX once it's ungrounded. Well, absolutely stunning news from Dublin. and what also might explain EASA's recent change of heart on certifying the Boeing MAX to return to European skies once again. Bloomberg News is reporting that Ryanair Holdings is reported to be in talks with Boeing to buy between 150 and 200 Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. No, you heard that right. Ryanair is discussing a mix of MAX 200s, the version it has already ordered, and the bigger MAX 10, the Irish Independent reported, without saying where it got its information. An order could be placed by year's end, the newspaper reported. Ryanair, Europe's largest discount carrier, declined to comment, as did representatives for Boeing. A purchase of that size would total at least $18.7 billion at list prices, making it the biggest plane order in 2020, which would be a quite remarkable sale given the multi-year grounding of the MAX combined with the nearly year-long pandemic. After his test flight Wednesday, September 30th, FAA boss Steve Dickson said, "I liked what I saw on the flight this morning. I felt very comfortable and very prepared based on the training." Dickson, a former fighter pilot, lawyer, and Delta Airlines captain, was in Seattle on Monday and Tuesday to complete the training, including time in a flight simulator now proposed for pilots before they can fly the MAX again. On Wednesday, he took off from Boeing Field just before 9 a.m. He flew east to Moses Lake, where he landed the jet, then returned to Seattle after almost a 2-hour flight. The flight included practicing high angle of attack patterns, activating the MCAS system that was the cause for both crashes. I got a chance to see how the new system performed, and essentially it's a much more benign system than the original design. Dickson said he promised soon after taking the top position at the FAA in July of 2019 that he wouldn't approve the MAX to fly again until he was comfortable putting his family on it. Yet on Wednesday, some of the families of the victims of the two crashes criticized Dickson's test flight as merely a public relations gift to Boeing. Dickson responded to that by saying he made the flights to see and feel for himself the outcome of all the redesign work on the airplane. Staying on the subject of the MAX, our other breaking story today. The FAA issued a draft report on revised training procedures for pilots flying the MAX aircraft. This is considered yet another expected milestone in getting the plane recertified and back in the air. John Hemmerdinger with Flight Global has seen some of the specifics and cites that the draft training report specifies that pilots must be taught about MCAS and associated failure conditions and actually experience MCAS activation in a flight simulator. They must also be trained to recognize runaway stabilizer, a condition occurring when a jet's horizontal stabilizer moves without pilot command. Training must also stress control column functionality and its effect on a runaway stabilizer and the need to trim out forces on the column prior to selecting the stab trim cutout. Pilots can use the trim cutout switch to disengage the jet's electronic horizontal trim system. Additionally, training must emphasize procedures for using electric and manual stabilizer trim during non-normal conditions and the effects of the air loads on the stabilizer. The draft pilot training recommendations was created through recommendations from the Joint Operations Evaluation Board, comprised of regulators from the EU, USA, Canada, and Brazil. In other Boeing MAX-related news, CNBC is reporting that American Airlines is planning to start training its pilots on Boeing's improved 737 MAX this November. With the planned return to service for our Boeing aircraft in the near future, we will begin conducting special training for our pilots, American's Director of Flight Training, Planning, and Scheduling said in a pilot memo. The company expects to train all of its 737 pilots on the MAX by the end of January 2021. The Puget Sound Business Journal is reporting that GE Aviation said Monday, September 28th, that its massive GE9X engine, which powers Boeing's new 777X, has officially been certified by the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration. The certification marks an important milestone in the Boeing XXX program and comes after problems with the engine that delayed the program's scheduling for months. GE9X Program General Manager Carl Sheldon said company officials are pleased with the performance of the engine following extensive ground and flight testing by Boeing. 8 GE9 test engines completed just under 5,000 hours and 8,000 cycles to win the required FAA certification, the company said. And finally, it's not quite yet time to say goodbye, but it is the end of an era. According to Forbes, last week on September 25th, at its production plant in Toulouse, France, Airbus completed initial assembly of the last A380 Super Jumbo ever, the world's largest passenger plane. The company has built 242 of the double-decker airlines, but the future of the final jet, serial number 272, is uncertain. Will it ever fly passengers? That's a question for the airline customer, Airbus says. The last A380 is one of 8 that Dubai-based Emirates still has on order. Emirates is the largest operator of A380s with a fleet of 115 in service. Thanks to the 2020 worldwide pandemic, all but a handful of its current fleet of Super Jumbos is grounded, though the airline did resume A380 service to 6 destinations: Moscow, Toronto, Cairo, Jiangsu, London, and Paris starting in July. As of August, the number of parked A380s worldwide stood at 204, excluding previously retired jets. Well, that wraps up this inaugural episode of Maximus Aviation's Week in Review. What do you think? Is this a feature to the channel that you would support and watch on a regular basis? Let me know down below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and ring the bell. And as always, remember, leave the rubber on the runway and your troubles on the ground. And I will see you next time in the air. Yeah, this is Maximus.